Hey, everybody, welcome to the Buck Brief. This episode, David Harsanyi back in the mix. He's a senior editor at The Federalist. You can read his latest at thefederalist.com. David, let's jump right into it. As I speak to you, it has now been, I think, confirmed, as initially reported, that Biden has threatened to withhold munitions from Israel if they go into Rafah. What's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, he made the announcement himself in an interview on CNN because the reason he could have privately, obviously, told Israel, if you go in, we're going to hold back this precision weaponry or whatever. But he did it on TV because obviously it's aimed towards the voters in Dearborn, the people at protesting in Colombia, and so on. It's a surrender to the anti-Semitic mobs. It's going to incentivize them to even protest more and protest, take over buildings, whatever they do. So yeah, he announced it that he's going to hold back all kinds of, I guess, offensive weaponry from Israel if they go into Rafah.
What do you think? I mean, I so that there's the political calculation that he's making, which I think is obvious to everybody, right? And you just laid it out. What is Israel supposed to do? Not based on what the lunatics on the campus say, because Israel's supposed to not exist, right? Like all of its people die or get pushed somewhere else, and it's from the river to the sea is the chant. Like we all know what those, like the campus protesters, really want. But what does the Biden administration expect by saying we're going to make it harder for you to finish the job? Do you know what I mean? What's the next step in their mind?
I think there are a lot of factors at work. Now, obviously, I think we should set the table and say that I think, or at least that I think, that Biden is sort of a feckless, hollowed out person. He doesn't have any principles. It's not like he has some sort of master plan here or is driven by any sort of ideology. His only worry here, I believe, is to get enough votes to win Michigan or,
Right.
maybe another state. So, but I do think that his administration has always had a lot of Obama, people who have an ideological problem with Israel. I think they're pro-Iran. I think they're anti-Saudi Arabia. I think they want Iran to be a regional power. I think they think Israel is too far right-wing, that they're not giving a state to the Palestinians, so on and so forth. So they are fine, cynically using this now to kind of undermine Israel. I don't think they do have a plan. I mean, have you seen this administration? What do they have a plan on anything? I mean, they have destroyed the economy. They, when you think about any kind of thing they do, like the student loan stuff, for instance, it's always just to get some votes. It's never really any kind of long-term, I think, policy plan or position among them. So I don't know what they want Israel to do. I think they want to wait for the election, and after the election, they'll probably let Israel do maybe whatever it wanted. I don't know.
That's the part of this that I keep coming back to, and I also can't, meaning that there's no, oh, wait, don't go into Rafah. Okay, then what? Cede territory back to Hamas and let people that have been fleeing, who were part of the operation against Israel on October 7th, like let them continue. This is an unreasonable ask, and also to wait until now to do this. It just, none of this makes any sense, except for, again, what you laid out, which is clearly the case, which is that this is a domestic political calculation for Biden. But I remember, the same people that are saying don't go into Rafah were calling for a ceasefire before Israel had done anything, which is a remarkable thing. I mean, it would be like Japan calling for a ceasefire after Pearl Harbor. Like, hey guys, we don't want war. We just killed a couple thousand of your service members and crippled the Pacific Fleet while taking, like 20 other countries. But let's have a ceasefire now. I mean, this is the logic of the left on this stuff.
Well, the ceasefire is a euphemism for Israel should not fight back. That's always been the case. They want a ceasefire there. But think about this also. I mean, there are American hostages, at least 5 of them, if they're alive. We don't know. And Biden has stripped Israel of any kind of leverage in negotiating to try to get those hostages out. Why would Hamas, if they know that the Americans are going to put a leash on Israel, give back anyone? They wouldn't. And obviously it's going to incent, they're going to, and the worst part of this, I think, is that it hurt, not the worst part actually, but they will also hurt the Palestinian people. This just means more war. Having Hamas survive means they will take that foothold. They will still run Gaza in the future, and Israel will once again have to go in because these are Islamists and nihilists. They want death among their own people. They want martyrs. They want dead children. and it's, it puts everyone in an incredibly bad position. Moreover, Hamas is a terrorist organization by the State Department's own calculations, right? So you're basically saving a group that you yourself should want to destroy. Again, for some votes in Michigan or whatever Biden thinks it's going to get.
How is and this I always tell my radio audiences, this factors into my thinking about the whole Israeli Palestinian issue. I always want to ask people this, or those who disagree with me, how is Hamas different in any significant way from Al Qaeda, really? And I think that's an interesting question. I wanted you to explore that for me a little bit. In what ways, ideologically, ethically, is Hamas different from Al Qaeda?
They actually, in many ways, well, they're not different. I know that's a rhetorical question.
Well, of course, but I mean, what's the connective tissue here as you see it? Because as I see it, I'm like, this is the same. The species of evil that Hamas leadership represents, or like the type of evil that they are, is, to me, and their mindset, their approach, it's exactly when I was working for the CIA and we're going after AQI leadership in Iraq and various terror groups, including Al Qaeda, but a whole bunch of other ones too, running across the border into Pakistan, in Afghanistan. To me, I'm just like, this is the same thing, guys. I don't really see the difference. Is okay, geographic, and there's some different history about why they're fighting, but the ideology, I don't see any difference.
Yeah, I mean, Hamas doesn't even make any pretenses that it wants some kind of agreement or that it believes in a two-state solution. It wants a one-state solution. It does not believe Israel should exist at all. But I mean, you're right about this, but even more so, Hamas is an outgrowth of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. I mean, it is part of a history and a long ideological, politically, but also, theologically, that connected to Al Qaeda and other groups.
Well, I was going to say the same Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt that gave us Ayman al-Zawahiri, who was number 2 in Al Qaeda, which doesn't seem to get talked about very much in the media.
Right. Now, obviously, there's a Sunni-Shia split in Islam, but even the Shia, Iran doesn't really care about that when it's just has these proxy armies causing problems.
I always say this too: when it comes to killing Jews, the Iranians will write checks to any Muslim anywhere. They don't care.
Right. Now, I think it's about Jews. I think it's about Jews on campus here. I think it's about Jews there. However, even if Israel was a Christian nation, I think that they would have the same problem with Israel, because their problem is that there are infidels there, colonizers, whatever euphemism they use to explain that, who need to be either converted, killed, or
I used to see the actual propaganda in Iraq, for example, from Al Qaeda in Iraq, which was run by Abu Musab al-Zarqawi. It was a Jordanian, and I used to see, and they would always refer to like U.S. forces as either tools of the Jews or just as Jews. So the Americans in Iraq were always tied into Jews and Israel as well by the jihadist forces there. You see what I mean? Like that was always in their propaganda too. So I know you're saying Hamas is specifically focused on the Jews, but what I'm saying is anytime jihadists are fighting anyone anywhere, those people are basically a tool of the Jews, or they're working on behalf of the Jews.
I always get sometimes these self-hating Jews here or others tell me that this anti-Semitism is caused by Israel. Having Israel makes Jews less safe. Now, I am not a scholar, but I've read a lot of books about Jews and about Jewish history. And you can't go 5 pages in a book about Jewish history with not another massacre happening for 1,000 years, way before Israel ever existed. So when you hear Zionist, that just means Jew. And every time I see one of these riots or I hear that propaganda you're talking about, it just tells me Israel needs to exist. And we need to be, at least I need to be, and others, I hope, be more supportive of it. Because there needs to be a place for Jews to go around the world where they can be protected. Never again for Israelis is not I wrote about this earlier in the week, but it's not a hashtag and it's not giving speeches. It's picking up a gun. And those are the Jews that these people hate the most. They hate that they can fight back. At least that's how I see it,
Yeah, no, I see the same way. I want to talk to you more about the campus issue here in a second and how you think this will play into the election. But first up, and I was speaking about jihadists, we remember what happened on 9/11 and the war on terror that came after it. Well, since 9/11, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation has been committed to improving the lives of veterans, first responders, and their families. For over 20 years, the foundation has helped America keep its solemn promise to never forget. Tunnel to Towers provides mortgage-free homes to Gold Star families and the families of fallen first responders with young children, and builds specially adapted smart homes for catastrophically injured veterans, and is working to eradicate veteran homelessness. David Marshall served in the Army during World War II and fought in the Battle of the Bulge. He has never forgotten the sacrifices of his comrades in arms, nor the efforts of first responders on 9/11 and in the days and months ahead that followed. He is a loyal and proud foundation donor. Tunnel to Towers is committed to supporting veterans, first responders, and their families, and they need your help. Join the foundation on its mission to do good and never forget. Donate $11 a month to Tunnel to Towers at T2T.org. That's T, the number 2, T.org. All right, David, the campus stuff, for a lot of people, I think that they are seeing this maybe for the first time or they've forgotten. I mean, there were anti-Israel protests in the Pioneer Valley in Massachusetts when I was in school over 20 years ago. I mean, this is not, Zionism is apartheid signs and all this. I've seen this for a very long time. This time around, though, because it's in an election year and it's caught on, and obviously because global events have created a focus on this, there's concern over the political calculations. Do you think that these protests end up actually hurting Democrats in a way that we can point to in the fall, and specifically with Jewish voters? We were talking to Muslim voters before. What about Jewish voters?
I'm unsure. I would say that, the calculation by Democrats is that Jewish voters won't leave the Democratic Party, but, Muslim voters will stay at home, right? I don't know. I think it might backfire, especially with what Biden has just done. I don't think it's going to be this sea change for sure. I mean, I just don't see that happening. It's not going to happen for various reasons. But I think most Americans, and when you look at polls, it's true, see these protesters in the correct light as people who are, listen, when you see someone say death to Israel, death to America chants are going to follow almost every time. Those two things are connected. I think most normies understand that. So I think the more those protests are connected to Democrats, the more it hurts them. The people in Dearborn aren't going to be mollified because of what Biden did today. They want, until you're carpet bombing Tel Aviv, they're not going to be happy. So I don't know I think he's made a miscalculation here. And he's trying to do, by the way, he still says, we're ironclad supporters of Israel. Like, I don't know if he knows what that word means, but I don't think people will see it that way moving forward. So I think you might see some Jews moving over, but I don't think you're going to see a sea change because most of them are secularized and they care more about other issues than Israel. It's just a fact. So I don't know.
Yeah, I honestly, I have to say what I've said on the air. I've told Clay. Clay thinks that there'll be a double-digit swing in the Jewish vote over this. I don't think so. So
I've heard that my whole life. I've heard that my whole political life. This is worse than anything maybe that's happened before. But I mean, if they didn't move Barack Obama associated with anti-Semites his whole career, he was probably an anti-Semite to some extent. I'm not saying he hated his neighbor or anything like that, but he was anti-Israel. If they didn't move for him, I just don't see it happening right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. We'll get into some more stuff here in a second, and maybe David can get them to turn off that noise on his computer, whatever's going on there. But on the podcast, I cut through the noise, speaking of noise, the nonsense, the ulterior motive, so we can uncover the truths no one else is going to tell you. And that's what my colleague Mark Chaikin does, but he does it for the U.S. stock market. Mark worked on Wall Street for 50 years, and across those decades, he invented 3 new indices for the NASDAQ and has predicted some of the biggest market shifts of the past decade, including the recent mania in AI stocks. Mark says the majority of Americans are about to miss out on a critical turning point in this AI frenzy. He's calling this a new dawn for U.S. stocks. And Mark predicts dozens of specific companies will be impacted in just the next 90 days. That's why Mark has agreed to share one of his favorite AI stocks to buy now with you. He's put everything you need to know in a new presentation you can watch for free at 2024aistock.com. That website is 2024aistock.com, 2024aistock.com, paid for by Chaikin Analytics. All right, David. Where I was about to take you, I was like, wait, we're going on a magical journey to the next topic. What do you think about the VP? Does it matter?
Trump's VP.
Yeah.
I mean, it always matters somewhat because it says a lot about a candidate, who he picks. I think lately, Trump, he picked Pence. and Bush picked Cheney and Obama picked Biden. Those are people who were supposed to sort of help them and moderate them, and not necessarily be the next candidate. I think Trump could use someone like that, to sort of calm him down sometimes, lead him in the right direction, organize the administration, hire the right people, help him in that way. But I don't think most voters care about that. They just want someone who sort of excites them. And I'm not sure there's anyone out there who's going to be able to do that.
Trump brings a lot of excitement himself, that is for sure. In a lot of ways, to a lot of people. I think there's no question about that. Who do you think would be the best choice right now of the people that are getting talked about? Like, I won't ask you who's it going to be, just because I don't think Trump knows who it's going to be honest with you. I think he likes to keep everybody, it's the reality TV thing. It's like, I'll tell you who after this next commercial break, right? I mean, it's a tease. He understands how to maximize the press and the attention from this whole thing. But who do you think would be the smart decision, right? Never mind who will be the person.
DeSantis.
Yeah.
He would be the smart person, because he is the guy who could take the mantle and is actually very competent and would help that administration be more competent, and then he could run for president himself. But I'm not sure. I doubt that that's going to happen. Is
there really this issue about the Electoral College? You're both from the same state or something. Is that right? People always bring this up. I'm like, I don't know. To me, I'd have to look into it, right? Do you know what I'm talking about, though? People say, oh, you can't have a president and a vice president from the same state. I've looked it up, and it seems like some say yes, some say no. Do you know what I'm talking about with that?
Yeah, I think that we've blown up the sort of normal presidential campaign setup. So I don't think it would matter at all. And I think most people associate him with New York anyway, Trump. So
right. I mean, couldn't he just claim New York residency or something for the purposes of the election? I mean, he's got a home in both places. Maybe there are tax implications.
They're not. You're saying they're not allowed to have two people from the same state?
Yeah, you're not allowed to be from the same state as like a constitutional issue.
Right. I forgot about that. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know the specifics in the sense of if he can just claim to be from New York if he wanted to.
Right. That's why when people bring it up, I'm like, even if that's true, like, can't he just be like, I got a residence in New York, now I'm a New Yorker? I don't know. But maybe there are tax implications to that.
People would disagree with me, but even Youngkin or someone I just think he needs kind of a competent normie. I keep saying normie, but I think it's important to like attract middle class kind of independent voters who shows competency in actually running government. I think he needs more of that. So that's where I would go. I don't exactly know who would be best, though.
Yeah, I appreciate it. This is David Harsanyi. He'll be like, I'm not sure. Everybody else in this business is like, I have the answer. Some people make predictions all the time that are wrong, and no one seems to care, but it's kind of funny.
My big problem is that I don't think there are really solutions to most things. You know what I mean? Like, I think that we can find solutions through government for most things, but usually it's just like you got to ride it out.
Yeah, well, increasingly, I think politics is really just a venting platform for frustration, and that most of the time, the best thing that we get from this is that it gives us all a thing that we get to, vent our frustrations about different things, and everyone gets to vent, and there's this big cacophony of frustration, and very little actually changes. But at least we have this forum, this place to kind of shout into the pillow, you know what I mean, or like shout into the dark closet, so we can get it out of our system. So anyway, I remember wasn't it Analyze This, where Robert De Niro is told to shout in the pillow by his therapist, and he starts shooting it with the gun, right? So I was thinking about it because I got a gun read. Do you have any firearms, David?
Oh yeah,
nice. I figure because you've written books about guns. Bear Creek Arsenal is a sponsor. I was just visiting them 2 weeks ago in Sanford, North Carolina. They're awesome. They make incredibly well-made firearms. David, when you check out the prices on these things, mind-blowing. I have a rifle. It's one of the most expensive, biggest, well-known AR manufacturers out there. I think it costs 5 times as much as my Bear Creek Arsenal AR. I've had them side by side at the range shooting. Can't tell the difference, except one's a whole lot more expensive than the other. But the craftsmanship, the care put into Bear Creek Arsenal firearms are amazing. They offer wide range of premium calibers, fraction of what the competition offers. They have no middleman fees, and they're all about bringing you the best possible prices. So I've got my Grizzly handgun at home. I've got my BC-15 at home, which is their AR, and they're fantastic. Learn more about Bear Creek Arsenal at bearcreekarsenal.com/buck. Use promo code Buck to get 10% off your first order. BearCreekArsenal.com/Buck. Use promo code Buck for 10% off. David, are you allowed to talk about the book you're working on yet? Just as a little preview for when we do a whole deep dive on it, or are you keeping it quiet for now?
I could just mention it. It's a book about how the left has turned. We often hear how the right are conspiracy theorists, this and that, but the left's entire agenda, its entire outlook has become paranoid and conspiratorial and sort of scaremongering and fearmongering. And it's important to talk about it because their kind of fearmongering and scaremongering and conspiracy theories are spread by people in the media, by reputable
by establishment, by the establishment. Right. Yes, it's on like Morning Joe.
Right, it's packaged for like people, and that is much more dangerous than some kook on YouTube yelling about the flat Earth or whatever. So I think it's important for us to think about.
I've spread the word about this, and I've actually said it out. I've cited you by name on the radio a few times. I remember your book. Pardon me for forgetting the title, but I do remember the book and the part of it where you talk about how if England was a U.S. or the U.K. was a U.S. state, it would be poorer per capita than Mississippi. That's really made the rounds. Like people say that now. They're like, do you know that the UK would be poorer per capita than the poorest U.S. state per capita? Because people have this thing of like, oh, everyone's just, walking around to their countryside mansions, their Tudor-style mansions, drinking tea while they go bird hunting. It's like, no, actually, America's much better off. So I just thought you should know that you've like changed perception on that.
I'm happy to hear that. Yeah, my book is called Eurotrash, and it's all. I'll give you another quick stat. If you took the per capita wealth of the average African American in America, he would still be richer than the average of virtually any real European country. So even if you're a minority here and you're there are problems for sure in many of those populations, you're still doing better than most Europeans.
There we go. All right, David Harsanyi, always a pleasure, sir. Thanks for making the time.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.